Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. A British man who drove into pedestrians and stabbed a security guard outside a Manchester synagogue has been shot dead by police, prompting British Prime Minister Keir Starmer to reinforce security at synagogues nationwide and British government to vow to fight anti-Semitism. Israeli forces have intercepted nearly all boats in the Gaza Sumud Flotilla, including one carrying Greta Thunberg, who claimed in a pre-recorded video that she was abducted by Israeli troops, sparking global protests in many countries, including Italy and Turkey, amid rising diplomatic tensions. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati has said that Cairo, along with Qatar and Turkey, is pressing Hamas to accept President Donald Trump's ceasefire plan to end the nearly two-year war in Gaza. The proposal unveiled by the White House this week calls for a hostage prisoner exchange, Israeli withdrawal, Hamas disarmament, among other demands. Drone sightings, which had forced Munich airport to halt flight operations on Thursday night, has now resumed its operations. The halt, which resulted in 17 cancellations, 15 diversions, and disruptions for nearly 3,000 passengers, follows similar drone disruptions in Denmark and Norway. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung urged North Korea to resume family reunions for the 36,000 South Koreans separated since the 1950 to 1953 war, calling it a humanitarian responsibility ahead of the national holiday. The last reunions took place in August 2018, but ties have frosted since, with North Korea even dismantling the reunion facility. A Finnish district court has dismissed the case against the captain and two officers of the Eagles oil tanker, ruled to have no jurisdiction over the 2024 Baltic Sea cable breach. The crew pleaded not guilty, claiming a technical fault caused the anchor to drop unnoticed, further complicating efforts to prove the criminal intent. Vietnam's death toll from Typhoon Boloi has now risen to 51, with 14 missing and 164 injured, as the central bank urges banks to support affected businesses, according to local government reports. While the storm has caused an estimated $603 million in damage. The death toll from the collapse of the boarding school in Indonesia has now risen to 9 people, with nearly 60 students still trapped under the rubble. Rescuers using cranes and sensors continue to search through the debris after the building collapsed during an afternoon prayer, leaving mostly teenage boys dead or injured. Now we move on. Reports citing a Hamas official have indicated that Hamas needs more time to study the Gaza peace plan, put forward by US President Donald Trump and backed by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. As per the official, Hamas is still continuing consultations regarding Trump's plan and has informed mediators that the consultations are ongoing and need some time. This comes after President Trump gave Hamas an ultimatum of 3 or 4 days to accept his plan to end the war in the Palestinian territory. The plan specifies an immediate ceasefire and exchange of all hostages held by Hamas for Palestinian prisoners held by Israel, a staged Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, the disarmament of Hamas, and the introduction of a transitional government led by an international body. Now for this discussion, we are joined by guest Matti Zweig. He's a geopolitical expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Matti, for joining us again. Good to see you. Matti, how optimistic can we be? Do you think Hamas will agree to these proposals, and why do you think Hamas might not agree?
Well, Asuma, thank you for having me. I think this is very clear today. Who is for this agreement? Israel which is, of course, not very happy with some of the points, but they say this must have an end. Let's go with the Trump proposition. Trump, of course, the moderate Arab countries, most of the countries of the world, and who is against it? Hamas. And all his allies, which means Iran, or even secretly some of the elements in the government of Qatar, which they are going to say, no, we are for this agreement from the other side. They have been, I don't know, is somehow being like partners with Hamas. And this is very clear today. Hamas doesn't want peace. Hamas want to hold the hostages as a card for their survival. And let's not fool ourselves. Hamas is a genocidal, jihadist, terrorist group that doesn't want to free the Palestinian people from their grip. And they have now an alternative to free the hostages, to dismantle themselves, and even to the heads of Hamas to give an amnesty and to go out from Gaza or to stay, and it will be no harm for them. So why do they say no? Let's think about it. It's very simple. They want to keep power because they see that there are a lot of fool countries in the world, like some of the European countries, giving a price to terrorism and not to the Palestinian people when they recognize, in the way they recognize a Palestinian state, not through agreement, not through dialogue, but through a group that has been attacking Jews just because being Jews, and killing and raping and burning babies, and this their price. When they see people is full enough to give them a price, they continue with their position. But anyway, I think in this moment, they are going to have to be flexible, because if not, Israel is going to finish with them, even if it's going to cost more and more death and bloodshed. Nobody wants this in Israel. They just have to free the hostages, dismantle themselves, and the war will finish in 5 minutes.
And Maddie, since you've mentioned European nations, some of European nations are recognizing Palestinian state as a reward to Hamas. People might criticize it as a reward to Hamas. So why do you think Europe decided to do that? What is in it for those countries who recognized a Palestinian state?
Every case is different, but you have some cases that they did out of fear of getting all the situation to escalate and to translate it in more discomfort in their own population, if it's from the left voters or Muslim voters. And you have also other countries like Spain or France that they have, especially Spain, a very high situation of a lot of corruption, and they are trying to hide in their problems, giving people to think about other things that they are not their own problems. This is very sad, and this is all conjunctural from what is happening now in this moment, looking at the short time and not in the long time, what is going to be with the future and the real peace that can be between the nations. Of course, inside Israel is also a lot of criticism with the government, because they are like using this situation to continue with their ideology of going until the end, even at the cost of the hostages. And this is very sad for the Israeli population. From the other side, the Israeli population has the right and the capacity to change their government if they think they are wrong in democratic elections. The Arab world is not going to do that. Hamas is not going to do that. Even the Palestinian Authority, they don't have democratic elections already more than 20 years. So let's open the eyes and see the real situation as it is. The world must press Hamas, not Israel. To press Israel in this moment is not going to bring anything good. is just going to be more of the same. Only pressing Hamas to free hostages and dismantle themselves can bring any change on the ground.
And how do these past of failed ceasefire deals, and also the past of failed accord?
Because from 2007, when Hamas took the power from the PLO and the PA, in Gaza Strip, all the circle of violence that has been promoted by Hamas all the time, because you have not to forget that there was not even one single Israeli soldier in the Gaza Strip. And commodities and products and everything and electricity was flowing from Israel inside the Gaza Strip. The workers from Gaza, they were coming every day to work in Israel, and they used all this situation to attack Israel. So all the past ceasefires that had been in the past, they have been like aspirin for a cancer, a person with cancer. That's what it was. If you look at it backwards, historically, that's what it was. We are in the moment of truth. Hamas is not a movement, a legitimate movement that can exist militarily. They can maybe exist politically if they are not going to plan other attacks on the sovereign state of Israel. But otherwise, they must be erased from the face of the earth. I'm talking about militarily and politically, of course. If they are going to exist, we have to cope it in the future, but they have no place in any future as good neighbors of the sovereign state of Israel.
Thank you, Maddie, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we move on. Russian President Vladimir Putin has accused France of using the investigation into Russia-linked oil tanker as a political distraction from its own domestic challenges. President Putin has condemned the seizure of the tanker in neutral waters, calling it an act of piracy and insisting there was no military cargo on board. He suggested that the probe serves to divert public attention away from France's difficult internal political situation, further escalating tensions between Russia and Western nations over maritime disputes. Let's listen in.
Так ли это важно для Франции? Важно. Знаете почему? Исходя из внутриполитической тяжелой ситуации для правящей во Франции верхушки. Потому что у них нет никакого другого способа отвлечь внимание населения, граждан Франции, от сложных, трудно решаемых проблем внутри самой Французской Республики. И поэтому очень хочется перенести, как я уже сказал в своем выступлении, напряжение на внешний контур, возбудить какие-то другие силы, другие страны, в частности Россию, спровоцировать нас на какие-то активные действия и сказать французам: французы, ко мне, сплотитесь вокруг меня, я вас поведу к победе.
Now for this discussion, we're joined by our guest, Matti Zweig. He's a geopolitical expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Matti, for staying with us. Now, in our previous discussion, you touched down upon European leaders using other wars or other nations' problems to distract their voters or to gain traction. What is your analysis about now President Putin's accusation that France is using this tactic about the Russia-linked oil tanker as a political distraction? What do you think?
Well, I think that the answer is yes, not because I can agree or not agree with Putin, because if they did something that is wrong, I mean, some other government, in this case France, they have to prove it. They have not only to accuse, but to prove it. This is one thing. So it has some facts to prove this accusation. Let's do it. From the other side, the same as with the Israel-Gaza conflict, Macron is very under pressure. He has pressure, in his case, very special pressure, because the ones that they are gaining from all this political situation are the extreme right and the extreme left. He's in the middle of this. He thinks he's going to lose the power, and he's using all international problems to cover his own political internal problems. This is very, very transparent, because if you have a position, an international position, as a country, it's very good that you say what you think. It doesn't matter if it's about Russia, Ukraine, or Israel-Gaza conflict, etc. But to use all kind of rumors to say, I think this or think that, it's better that he can prove it, and not to let the other side only defend themselves in the way that Putin did.
Right. And what do you think, what does this accusation suggest about the tensions between Russia and EU nations now?
Well, the tension has been, in the last years, more and more growing all the time because of the Russian-Ukraine war. Russia is in a bad position now from the international point of view, because they have attacked Ukraine. They have been proposed to do a ceasefire, even knowing that some of the territories that they have conquered, they're going to be like a sacrifice from the Ukrainian side to end this war, and they didn't do it. And they didn't do it because they are in a position that Trump is all the time threatening to them, but not really until now, going back to the Biden's position of being with Europe 100% against Russia. And he thinks that if in this moment he can continue and gain more and more territories on the ground, he doesn't have to stop. In the frame of all this situation, he has always been accused of doing different kind of disinformation, hackers attacks on infrastructure, and in this case about the tanker, and all this, as it was 1.5 years ago or maybe more, about the cut of the cables under the sea and the Baltic. Also, all these accusations, the potential threat for him, and this is a consequence of this.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Matti Zweig for joining us and sharing that insight from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much. Now we move on. Clashes have erupted in Mexico City on the anniversary of deadly Now we move on to our next news. Crowds of protesters marched through downtown Casablanca in Morocco, chanting against corruption and demanding social justice, freedom, and improvements in education and healthcare, as part of a wave of youth-led demonstrations across the country. Moroccan Prime Minister Aziz Akhanouch has said that he was open to dialogue to end protests as security forces prepared for a sixth night of demonstrations that have escalated into riots across the country. Hundreds of people have been arrested and injured, with buildings ransacked and cars torched since the protest began on Saturday last week. Initially with demands for better education and healthcare. The protests initially began with demands for better education and healthcare. They have been organized by a loosely formed anonymous youth group calling itself Gen Z 212, using online platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, and the gaming app Discord. Now we move on. Sean Diddy Combs, an American rapper and businessman, submitted a letter to U.S. District Court Judge Arun Subramanian yesterday, a day before his sentencing in Manhattan. This comes sex trafficking. The 55-year-old hip-hop artist faces up to 20 years in prison, with U.S. federal prosecutors seeking more than 11 years and $500,000 fine Moreover, Combs was earlier acquitted on the more serious charges of racketeering and sex trafficking. His defense has now asked for a 14-month sentence, which would not account for time already served term in Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center. Meanwhile, in the letter that Diddy submitted, he has accepted responsibility for his actions, expressing remorse for assaulting his former partner and acknowledging past mistakes in his personal life. He has also described struggles with drug abuse, sharing that he is now sober for the first time in 25 years. Additionally, Diddy has asked the court for mercy, citing his responsibilities as a father to his 7 children, and described the inhumane conditions that he has endured while incarcerated. Sean Diddy Combs, an American rapper and businessman, submitted a letter to U.S. District Court Judge Arun Subramanian yesterday, a day before his sentencing in Manhattan. This comes after his July conviction in 2 counts of transporting individuals to engage in prostitution, while he was acquitted of the more serious charges of racketeering and sex trafficking. The 55-year-old hip-hop artist faces up to 20 years in prison, with U.S. federal prosecutors seeking more than 11 years and $500,000 fine. Moreover, Combs was earlier acquitted on more serious charges of racketeering and sex trafficking. His defense has now asked for a 14-month sentence, which would account for time already served term in Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center. Meanwhile, in the letter that Diddy submitted, he has accepted responsibility for his actions, expressing remorse for assaulting his former partner and acknowledging past mistakes in his personal life. He has also described struggles with drug abuse, sharing that he is now sober for the first time in 25 years. Additionally, Diddy has asked the court for mercy, citing his responsibilities as a father to his 7 children, and described the inhumane conditions that he has endured while incarcerated. Now, for this discussion, we are joined by our guest, Gautam Mukherjee. He's a senior journalist, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Gautam Mukherjee, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, how might Sean Diddy Combs' letter, do you think this can change anything, knowing that the accounts that he's charged for?
It doesn't look like it attempt and reduce the sentence, but I don't think it has much chance of success.
Does this hold any significance of for the 14-month sentence that he's requesting? And can this influence anything, considering the charges that he was convicted of and also the time already served?
No, I don't think so. I think he's squarely guilty and will have to serve his sentence.
Right. And what are the broader implications of Combs' conviction on transportation to engage in prostitution, particularly regarding the legal and public perception of celebrity figures involved in such legal controversies?
Well, you know, when celebrity figures get involved in things like this, they're under the impression that they will be treated differently. The law will not strictly apply to them, and they will get away with it by and large. Now, when you don't bend the rules for them, perhaps they'll be more careful in future.
Right. And do you think that Diddy can come back after his sentences? Do you think he can come back to the public light? And do you think that his fans will accept him?
Yes, I think that will happen once he's served his sentence. There are many celebrities who are indicted and convicted for various things. Once they serve their sentence, they can go back to their celebrity status, and if they still display talent, there is no reason why their fans will not stick with them.
And building on our first or second question, how do Didi's statements about overcoming drug abuse and his role as a father factor into the argument for leniency in his sentencing? Do you think that this is just too small of a reason for him to bring it up to ask for leniency?
Well, his lawyer will have advised him to put all the positives there in the hope that it will lighten the sentence. However, many of these things are self-inflicted, and if you stop doing them, if you stop abusing drugs, for example, then the main beneficiary is you yourself. And so that is reward enough. Whether it should go some distance to reduce sentences for your wrongdoing, I don't know, and I don't think so.
And do you think that this kind of celebrities using or leveraging on the fact that they're celebrities so they might get away with some of the law, do you think this happens elsewhere in the world as well and not just Hollywood?
Yes, it is tried everywhere. In some countries, it even works, particularly if the celebrity is also politically connected. But if you have a functioning judicial system, and in America, by and large, the judicial system is functioning and working quite well, then this kind of thing doesn't really work.
Yes, and what factors should be considered when determining a fair sentence for someone, even such big moguls, music moguls, or celebrities convicted of serious charges, particularly when they express remorse and have taken responsibility for their actions?
Well, I think it is a matter of good behavior while in prison. Sometimes there is a remission of sentence after, say, 2/3 of the sentence has been already undertaken. This happens quite often. It happens even with murderers, let alone drug addicts and people who abuse others like this.
And lastly, Gautam Mukherjee, how might this celebrities or particularly Didi's past struggles such as overcoming drug abuse and fulfilling family responsibilities impact? Although you have said that it won't change much, is there any case where these kind of reasoning has impacted the court's decision on sentencing?
Not really. As I said before, overcoming your drug abuse is commendable, and the main beneficiary is you yourself. The other point about drug abuse, alcohol abuse, any kind of addiction, is that it is renowned to be one day at a time. Just because you've overcome it for the time being does not mean you've overcome it for the rest of your life. You could easily relapse and start all over again. So, in terms of a court sentence, you can take this into account and hope that the person will not abuse drugs in future, but there is no certainty, as the record proves, not just in the case of an individual, but in general.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Gautam Mukherjee for joining us and sharing that insight as a senior journalist. Thank you very much. This is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.